There are moments in a courtroom that stay with me forever. If this touches you, please subscribe. Some cases come and go, others sit in your chest like a stone. This was one of those cases. It was not about money alone, it was about dignity. It was about how we treat the weak. Comment and tell me, was I too harsh? In my 40 years on the bench, I've seen thousands of cases. I've heard every excuse. I've watched pride crumble. I've watched grace rise. But this one shook me deeply. It reached something old in me. My father, God rest his soul, used to say, character shows when nobody important is watching. That day, somebody important was watching. The court staff was. And more than that, a frightened old man was watching. Wait till you hear what happened next, but first, subscribe. He stood there with his hands trembling. His coat was too big. His eyes were lost. He kept rubbing his wedding ring. I knew before anyone spoke that pain had already entered the room. Thank you for being here. Please share this. The charge sounded simple on paper. The bank manager had humiliated an elderly customer with Alzheimer's. If this matters to you, please subscribe. The man had come to withdraw his own money. He forgot his PIN. He asked for help. Instead of kindness, he got mockery. Instead of patience, he got cruelty. And when the story reached my courtroom, I knew the real issue was not procedure, it was conscience. Let me take you back to that morning here in Providence. The courtroom felt colder than usual. The old wooden benches creaked, papers shuffled softly. My clerk looked up at me with that careful look she gets when she knows a case is heavy. I had already read the complaint twice. I had underlined the words public humiliation. That phrase stayed with me. I remember how the defendant walked in, expensive suit, sharp watch, perfect hair. If this touches your heart, please subscribe. He did not look worried. He looked annoyed. Like court was an inconvenience, like everyone else had failed to value his time. He sat back in his chair, crossed one leg over the other, and checked his phone before the hearing even began. That bothered me right away. I grew up in this neighborhood. My father worked 2 jobs. Wait till you hear what he said, but first, subscribe. I've seen good people struggle just to keep food on the table. I've seen proud men cry because they could not pay a bill. So when I see someone with every advantage treating ordinary people like dirt, something rises in me. Not rage alone, sadness too. Thank you for being here. Please share this. The elderly man was not in court that morning. His daughter came instead. She carried his medical papers. If you believe respect matters, please subscribe. She spoke softly. She looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from caregiving, from broken sleep, from watching someone you love drift away inch by inch. Her father had gone to the bank because he wanted to buy flowers for his wife's grave. That detail nearly broke me. Comment, what would you have done? She said he walked to the counter slowly. He asked for help remembering his PIN. The manager came over. Instead of taking him aside, instead of speaking gently, he said in a loud voice, "If you can't remember 4 numbers, maybe you shouldn't be trusted with money." The room went still when she repeated that. Even now I can hear it. Then she told me the rest. Her father said, "Sir, I'm sorry. I get confused." And the manager laughed. "If this angers you, please subscribe." He said, "That sounds like a you problem, not a bank problem." Then, according to 2 witnesses, he added, "Come back with someone who still has a working brain." When I heard those words, I felt my hands tighten on the bench. Comment below, was that beyond forgiveness? That was the first shock, not just the words, the way he said them. Wait till you hear the arrogance, but first subscribe. He smirked. He rolled his eyes. He waved the next customer forward while the old man was still standing there. One teller looked down in shame. Another offered tissues after the man began to cry. The manager, meanwhile, turned away and said, "I don't have all day." When I asked the defendant if he disputed the facts, he leaned forward and shrugged. "Your Honor," he said, "banking requires security. I can't run a daycare for confused seniors. If this touches you, please subscribe." That sentence spread across the courtroom like smoke. My clerk froze. The daughter gasped. I looked at him carefully then, because sometimes a person tells you exactly who they are. I gave him a chance. I always try to give a chance. I asked, "Do you hear how cruel that sounds? Thank you for being here. Please share this." He answered, "Cruel is a matter of opinion. Efficient is not." Then he smiled, not a nervous smile, not an embarrassed smile. A proud smile, the kind that says, I still think I'm right. Comment, was that the worst moment? In my 40 years on the bench, I've seen arrogance wear many masks: money, education, position. If this matters to you, please subscribe. But arrogance is fear in a fancy suit. My father said that too. It is weakness pretending to be strength. It is a small soul trying to stand tall by stepping on someone bent over with pain, and that day I saw it clearly. The defendant interrupted my clerk twice. He spoke over the daughter once. He sighed when records were read. At one point he tapped his watch and muttered, "Can we move this along?" You know what bothered me? Not just the insult, the complete absence of remorse. No shame, no apology, no sign that he understood another human being had been wounded. Comment below, should manners matter in court? I asked him whether he had offered any accommodation. A chair, a private desk, a call to family. He said, "That's not my job. Wait till you hear my struggle, but first subscribe." Then he added, "People like him are exactly why lines get backed up. People like him, not a customer, not a husband, not a grieving widower, just an obstacle, just a delay." That is when my frustration began to rise in earnest. Thank you for being here. Please share this. Part of me wanted to show mercy. I'll be honest with you. I'm not proud of anger. If this touches your heart, please subscribe. I believe in second chances. I believe most people are better than their worst day. I have spent years trying to see the wound behind the behavior. Maybe he was under pressure. Maybe he was poorly trained. Maybe he was having a terrible morning. But duty has a voice too. And that day, duty was loud. The clock ticked behind me. The courtroom was quiet, except for a paper shifting now and then. I could feel the weight on my shoulders. A judge cannot rule from temper. A judge must rule from principle. Still, my father's voice echoed in my mind. Son, the measure of a man is how he treats those who cannot help him. Comment, do you believe that? I thought about my wife that night before the hearing. She has always been my steady light. If this matters to you, please subscribe. Sometimes I'll tell her about a case without names. She listens. She doesn't rush. She said, "Frank, don't just punish the act. Answer the harm." That stayed with me. Answer the harm, not the insult alone, the harm. Hit that like button right now. 2 days earlier, I had a woman named Maria before me. Wait till you hear her story, but first subscribe. She had 3 parking tickets. She cleaned offices at night. She cared for her sister's 2 children in the morning. Her car had broken down twice. She stood before me with worn shoes and wet eyes. But she looked straight at the court staff and said, "I'm sorry for wasting the court's time. Thank you for being here. Please share this." Maria explained every ticket without excuses. She didn't blame the city. She didn't blame luck. If this touches you, please subscribe. She said, "I made mistakes, Your Honor. I just need a little breathing room." I asked her what money she had that day. She opened her purse. There were $12 inside and a bus pass. I could see embarrassment all over her face, but also honesty. Hit that like button right now. I reduced her fines. I gave her time. I wished her luck. And before she left, Maria looked at the clerk and said, "Thank you for speaking kindly to me. That's all. Just gratitude, just decency." I remember thinking afterward that struggle does not always harden people. Sometimes it makes them gentler. Sometimes people carrying the heaviest loads are the most respectful souls you'll ever meet. Comment below, do you know someone like that? That is why this bank manager's behavior struck me so hard. He was not desperate. He was not trapped. If this matters, please subscribe. He had power. He had training. He had choices. And he used those gifts to shame a sick old man asking for help with his own savings. Money can't buy decency. A title cannot excuse cruelty. Position only increases responsibility. Hit that like button right now. So there I was, torn between mercy and duty. I couldn't sleep that night. I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. I stood in the dark. I prayed for guidance. I asked myself a simple question. If I go soft here, what message do I send to every caregiver, every elder, every worker who thinks status gives permission to humiliate? Thank you for being here. Please share this. The next morning, I returned to the bench carrying that question. The defendant looked just as smug. If this touches your heart, please subscribe. He whispered to his lawyer and laughed once before we began. I noticed the daughter stiffen. That laugh told me he still did not understand. Or worse, he understood and did not care. Either way, the court had work to do. Comment. Was that laugh unforgivable? When I invited him to speak one last time, he said, "I think this whole thing is overblown. The customer was confused, the staff was busy, and people are too sensitive now. Hit that like button right now." Then he added, "I shouldn't be punished for telling the truth." There it was. Not regret, not humility. Entitlement on full display. He wanted the court to bless his contempt. I felt my hands shaking slightly beneath the bench, not from fear, from the weight of it. If this matters to you, please subscribe. Here in Providence, I have seen widows count coins. I have seen veterans forget where they parked because age does that. I have seen proud grandfathers lose names, dates, and numbers, but not their humanity. Everyone deserves respect, and everyone owes it. Thank you for being here. Please share this. Then came that moment judges know well. The room grew very still. The ticking clock sounded louder. Comment below, was justice coming? A cough in the back stopped halfway through. Even the defendant's lawyer lowered his eyes. I looked at the papers once more, then at the daughter, then at the man before me. In that silence, clarity arrived, not because I wanted it, not because it was easy, but because it was right. Hit that like button right now. I looked him in the eye and said, "Sir, this court is not deciding whether a bank needs security. Of course it does. This court is deciding whether your position gave you license to humiliate a vulnerable man. If this touches you, please subscribe." I told him the answer was no, 1,000 times no. His face changed a little then. The smile began to fade. I continued, "You were trusted with more than keys and codes. You were trusted with people. Wait till you hear the ruling, but first, subscribe. An elderly widower came to you for help. He left feeling ashamed of an illness he did not choose. That is not efficiency. That is moral failure. I chose each word carefully. Slow, firm, calm, no raised voice. A courtroom does not need shouting when truth is clear. Thank you for being here. Please share this." Then I delivered the penalty. First, the maximum fine allowed under the civil ordinance. If this matters to you, please subscribe. Not because money fixes humiliation, but because consequences must sting enough to be remembered. Second, mandatory completion of certified elder care and disability awareness training with proof filed to the court. Third, 100 hours of community service at a senior center, not in an office, but face-to-face. Hit that like button right now. And I was not done. I ordered a written apology to the elderly man and his family. Join me, subscribe for more. Not a lawyer's apology, his own words. I ordered the bank to review its treatment policies for customers with memory loss and cognitive illness and to report the changes. Then I said the part that mattered most to me. Respect is not optional service. It is the minimum price of human membership. He stared at me as though he had been slapped. His lawyer whispered urgently. He shook his head. "If this touches your heart, please subscribe." Then he said, "This is ridiculous. You're making an example out of me." I answered, "Yes, sir, because examples teach." He opened his mouth again, and I held up my hand. "No, you have spoken enough for one morning. Thank you for being here. Please share this." You could feel the air change. The daughter began to cry, quietly this time. The defendant's face reddened. "Hit that like button right now." He muttered that he would appeal. That was his right. I told him so. But I also told him appeals do not erase character. Court orders may be reviewed. Conduct remains your own. He looked down at the table then, perhaps for the first honest second of the hearing. Join me. Subscribe for more. After court, I sat alone for a few minutes. That happens sometimes after a hard ruling. If this matters to you, please subscribe. The room empties, but the feeling stays. I took off my glasses and rubbed my eyes. I wondered whether I had done enough. I wondered whether I had gone too far. Justice is heavy when it touches the heart as well as the law. Comment below. Have you ever carried a hard choice home? I walked to my car slowly that evening. The sky was turning gray-blue. Providence can look very tender at that hour. Wait till you hear what happened later, but first, subscribe. I thought about the old man, trying to buy flowers for his wife. I thought about memory slipping like sand through a hand. I thought about how humiliating it must feel to know something is leaving you while strangers watch. Thank you for being here. Please share this. At home, I told my wife the ruling. She listened quietly. Then she asked one question. Did you speak for the man who couldn't fully speak for himself? If this touches you, please subscribe. I said I tried. She nodded and touched my hand. Then sleep, she said. But I didn't sleep right away. Cases like this linger, they echo. Hit that like button right now. A few weeks later, I heard the community service had begun. At first, the defendant complained, "Join me, subscribe for more." He thought the work was beneath him. He arrived stiff and distant, but the senior center director later sent word that something shifted. An old veteran asked him 3 times what day it was. Instead of snapping, he answered 3 times, maybe 4. That caught my attention. Comment, can people really change? Then came the letter. Not the required apology alone, but a second note to the court. If this matters to you, please subscribe. He wrote that serving meals, helping with cards, and hearing stories from people with fading memory had unsettled him. He wrote, I saw my own grandfather in them. He admitted his conduct had been arrogant and cruel. I read that line twice. Hit that like button right now. Now, did that erase what happened? No. Harm leaves marks. The old man still had that day in his memory, even if other things slipped away. Join me, subscribe for more. His daughter later said the apology brought some peace, though not full healing. And that is honest. Some wounds close, some remain tender. But accountability can begin where excuses end. Thank you for being here. Please share this. Would I decide the same way today? Yes, I would. Not with joy, not with pride. If this touches your heart, please subscribe, but with peace. Because the punishment fit the crime in the truest way. It did not simply hurt him, it confronted him. It forced him to stand where the vulnerable stand. It required him to learn what he had refused to feel. Comment below, is that what justice should do? Here's the thing I want every young person, every worker, every boss, every public servant to hear. Hit that like button right now. You do not know the battle inside the person in front of you, the cashier who moves slowly, the patient who forgets, the customer who asks twice. The old man who cannot remember 4 numbers may still remember his wedding song, his daughter's first step, and the face of the woman he buried. Join me, subscribe for more. My father, God rest his soul, taught me something simple. Frank, he said, everyone is carrying a cross you cannot see. If this matters to you, please subscribe. That old saying has guided me my whole life, and faith teaches me the same. The test is not how we treat the strong. The test is how we treat the weak, the lost, the embarrassed, and the afraid. Thank you for being here. Please share this. I've seen thousands of cases, and I can tell you this. Procedure matters, but kindness matters too. Sometimes a sentence teaches through pain. Sometimes mercy teaches through relief. A good judge must know the difference. A good citizen must know it too, because courts cannot build a moral society by themselves. Hit that like button right now. If you work with the public, remember this story. If you care for an aging parent, I see you. Join me, subscribe for more. If you've ever been mocked on your worst day, I hope you know your dignity is real. No bank manager, no title, no smug little laugh can take that away. Human worth does not shrink when memory does. Thank you for being here. Please share this. And if you have been the arrogant one, listen closely. There is still hope. If this touches you, please subscribe. Shame can harden you, or it can wake you up. Accountability is not the enemy of compassion. Sometimes it is compassion, wearing work boots. Sometimes the most loving thing a court can do is stop a person before cruelty becomes habit. Comment, have you learned through consequences? I think often of that elderly man. I never forgot why he came to the bank. Flowers for his wife. Hit that like button right now. That is love lasting past loss. That is devotion surviving confusion. And to stand in the way of that with mockery is a kind of theft too. Not theft of dollars, theft of dignity, theft of peace. Join me, subscribe for more. So when you ask whether I was too firm, here is my answer. I was as firm as the moment required. If this matters to you, please subscribe, not because I hated the defendant. I did not because punishment gives me pleasure, it never does, but because a courtroom must sometimes say, in a clear voice, this far and no farther. Thank you for being here. Please share this. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs it. Comment and tell me what you would have done. Subscribe if you want more stories from the bench and lessons from life. We can still choose decency. We can still teach respect. We can still change. Good luck to you and God bless.